Nathan Carter walked slowly through the large stone gates of the citadel. The air was cool, and banners moved gently in the wind above his head. His boots pressed against the ground with a sound that seemed louder than it should have been. He had been gone for years, and every step he took back into the city felt like he was walking into another life. People looked at him as he passed, some whispering to each other. His face carried a scar that told its own story. It stretched across his cheek, a reminder of battles that no one around him wanted to remember. Nathan was older now. His body was strong, but his eyes showed the weight of time and loss. He remembered fire, smoke, and the cries of men who never came home. He had once carried a sword with pride, leading others with courage. But now he carried only memories. The sword was gone, the armor stored away. All that remained was the scar and the silence inside him. He had not wanted to come back, yet he had heard the call. There were rumors that the Queen herself would appear at the gathering that day. Some said it was only for ceremony, others whispered that it was for something greater. Nathan told himself it did not matter, but deep inside he felt something he could not explain. A pull, a question. Would she remember him? Or had time erased everything they once shared? The courtyard ahead was filled with soldiers in neat lines. They were younger, men and women who had not seen the same war. Their armor was bright, their faces eager. Nathan noticed the way some of them looked at him, not with respect, but with curiosity. To them, he was only a man marked by age and scars. They did not know what he had done, how he had fought to keep the walls standing when all hope was gone. He did not mind. He had never wanted glory, he'd only wanted peace. Still, as he stood there, he felt the weight of eyes on him, not just the soldiers, but the crowd that had gathered behind them. Farmers, workers, children on their parents' shoulders, they were all waiting for the Queen. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment and let out a slow breath. He remembered the sound of her voice long ago when the war raged. She had spoken to the people with strength and calm, even when the world was falling apart. He remembered nights when her words were the only thing keeping him standing. And now, after all this time, he would see her again. The doors to the grand hall opened, and silence spread through the courtyard. A figure stepped out, the sunlight shining against her crown. Queen Evelyn moved down the steps with grace, her robe flowing like water. She did not rush. Every step she took was steady, as if she carried the weight of all her people with her. The crowd bowed their heads, but Nathan did not move. His eyes were locked on her, and for the first time in years his heart felt unsteady. Her eyes scanned the gathering. She greeted no one at first, only looking, searching. Nathan felt a strange fear in his chest. Would she pass over him without a thought? Would she see only another face among hundreds? His hand almost rose to cover his scar, but he stopped himself. It was who he was now. He could not hide it, not from her. Then her gaze stopped. It landed on him. For a moment, Nathan thought he had imagined it, but no. She was looking at him, only him. The world around them seemed to blur, the sounds of the crowd fading into nothing. She did not smile, but her eyes softened. The Queen began to walk, each step bringing her closer to where Nathan stood. Nathan's heart beat hard in his chest. He stood still, his hands at his sides. Soldiers shifted to clear her path, though none dared to speak. The people watched in silence, knowing they were witnessing something they did not understand. When she reached him, she stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air was heavy with meaning, with memories. Nathan lowered his head slightly, unsure of what to say. But before he could speak, the Queen lifted her hand. Slowly, gently, she reached out and touched the scar on his cheek. Nathan froze. Her touch was soft, yet it carried more weight than any weapon he had ever held. It was not pity, it was not sorrow, it was recognition. Her eyes held his, steady and sure, and in that silence, Nathan felt years of distance collapse. The Queen's lips parted, and in a voice quiet enough that only he could hear, she whispered, "You survived." The courtyard was silent as Queen Evelyn's hand rested gently on Nathan's scar. The touch lasted only a moment, yet it carried the weight of years. Nathan felt his chest tighten, as if every memory of the war had returned at once. He had thought himself strong, but in that instant he felt fragile. Around them, no one dared to speak. The soldiers stood frozen, the crowd held its breath. The Queen's hand lowered slowly, but her eyes never left his. Nathan wanted to speak, but no words came. His throat was dry, his voice lost somewhere deep inside him. For years he had carried silence, and now, faced with her again, he found it difficult to break it. She, too, did not speak again. Instead, she studied his face, as though searching for the man she had once known beneath the scar and the years. At last, Queen Evelyn turned slightly and gave a signal. A guard stepped forward, but she raised her hand, and the man stopped at once. Her gaze returned to Nathan. "Walk with me," she said softly. Though her words were quiet, they carried across the courtyard. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. Legs felt heavy, yet he moved as she began to walk toward the great hall. The crowd watched in awe. Whispers followed them as they walked together across the stones. Some said he must have been a forgotten knight. Others guessed he was a common soldier who had once saved her life. No one knew the truth, but everyone felt the weight of the moment. Soldiers stepped aside as the Queen and Nathan entered the hall. Inside, the air was cooler. Tall pillars lined the chamber, and the light from the windows fell across the stone floor in long beams. The Queen led Nathan forward until they reached the center of the hall. There she stopped and turned to face him once more. For a long moment she was quiet, her eyes fixed on his scar. "You have carried this mark for many years," she said finally. Her voice was calm, yet her words were full of meaning. Nathan lowered his head slightly. "It is all I have left of those days," he answered. His voice was steady, though quiet. "I tried to leave it behind, but it followed me." Queen Evelyn stepped closer. "It is not just a scar," she said. "It is a sign that you endured. Many did not. You lived when others could not. That is no small thing." Nathan listened, unsure how to respond. He had never thought of it that way. To him, it had been nothing more than a mark of survival, a reminder of pain. But in her eyes, it was something different. "You were gone for so long," she continued. "There were days I thought you had fallen. When no word came, I feared the worst. And yet here you are." Her words struck him deeply. He had not known that she had thought of him in those years. He had believed himself forgotten, just another soldier lost to time. "I survived," Nathan said quietly, "but at a cost." His hand rose unconsciously toward the scar before falling again. "I lost brothers. I lost friends. I returned, but I returned alone." The Queen's eyes softened. She reached for his hand, taking it gently in her own. "You are not alone now," she said. "Your return means something, not only to me, but to this kingdom. You gave more than most ever could, and for that, you are not forgotten." Nathan felt a warmth spread through him that he had not felt in years. Her words lifted some of the weight he had carried for so long. For a moment, he let himself believe that his survival had meaning, that it was not just an accident of fate. The hall remained silent except for their voices. The guards stood at attention, but even they seemed moved by what they witnessed. Nathan and Evelyn stood in the center, two figures bound by memory and history, their presence filling the great hall with quiet strength. Outside, the bells of the citadel began to toll, calling the people to gather once more. The Queen did not release his hand. Instead, she looked into his eyes and said, "Come. The people must see that you have returned." Nathan hesitated, unsure if he was ready to stand before them. Yet her hand held his firmly, and he found himself nodding. Together, they turned toward the doors, stepping forward to face the world waiting outside. The doors of the great hall opened, and Nathan and Queen Evelyn stepped outside together. The bells rang across the city, and the people gathered quickly in the courtyard. The sight of the Queen holding Nathan's hand drew gasps from the crowd. They whispered and pointed, trying to understand who the scarred man was, and why the Queen treated him with such honor. The soldiers standing in line straightened their posture, sensing that something important was happening. Nathan felt uneasy as hundreds of eyes turned toward him. He had faced armies before, but this was different. These were not enemies. These were his people. He had once fought to protect them, but now they looked at him with questions in their eyes. He wondered if they would accept him, or see only the scar that marked his face. His steps slowed, but Queen Evelyn did not let go of his hand. She guided him forward with calm strength, her expression steady and unshaken. They stopped at the center of the courtyard. The Queen raised her free hand and silence fell over the gathering. Her voice carried clearly across the space, calm and certain. "This man," she said, "is no stranger. He is Nathan Carter. Years ago, when darkness threatened our walls and hope was nearly lost, he stood where no one else could. He bore the weight of battle so that others might live. Though time has passed, though scars have marked him, he has returned to us." The people stirred, their whispers turning to gasps. Nathan lowered his eyes, feeling the heat of their attention. He did not seek praise. He had never wanted it. Yet hearing his name spoken by the Queen before the kingdom filled him with a feeling he could not describe. His scar, once a mark of shame, now felt like a badge of truth. The Queen turned to face him, her eyes soft but full of strength. "You survived," she said once more, this time for all to hear. "And because you survived, so did we." Her words struck the crowd with power. Murmurs spread quickly, voices rising in agreement. Armors and craftsmen nodded. Mothers held their children close, and soldiers stood taller. They began to see Nathan not as a broken man, but as a living reminder of their endurance. Nathan felt something shift inside him. Years of silence, the weight of memories, the endless nights spent alone, they all began to ease. He had thought survival meant carrying pain alone, but now he understood it also meant sharing the story with others. His scar was not only his, it belonged to the kingdom too. The Queen's hand tightened around his. "Walk among them," she said quietly. Nathan hesitated, but then he nodded. Together, they moved through the crowd. People reached out as he passed, some touching his arm, others bowing their heads. A boy no older than 10 looked up at him with wide eyes. "Did you fight for us?" the child asked. Nathan paused, bending slightly so the boy could see his face. "Yes," he said gently. "I fought so you could live without fear." The boy smiled, and Nathan felt warmth in his heart that had long been absent. As they continued, more people came forward. An old woman with gray hair pressed her hand against his and whispered, "Thank you." A young soldier saluted him, eyes shining with respect. Nathan's steps grew steadier, his shoulders straighter. For the first time in years, he no longer felt like a man haunted by the past. He felt like part of the kingdom again. When they reached the far end of the courtyard, Queen Evelyn stopped once more and addressed the people. "Remember this," she said firmly. "Scars do not mean weakness. They mean survival. They mean courage. Let Nathan's story remind us that even in our darkest times, hope can live." The crowd cheered, their voices rising together. Nathan stood beside her, his heart full. He looked at the Queen and saw not only a ruler, but the woman who had never forgotten him. She had seen the scar, touched it, and given it meaning. He knew now that he was not just a survivor, he was part of a story larger than himself. As the cheers filled the air, Nathan allowed himself a small smile. He no longer felt the need to hide his scar. Instead, he lifted his head high, ready to face whatever came next. The Queen's presence beside him gave him strength, and the voices of the people gave him peace. In that moment, he felt whole again. The courtyard slowly grew quiet after the cheers faded. Nathan stood at the Queen's side, still holding her hand. He had faced storms, fire, and endless battles. But standing in front of his people filled him with a different kind of weight. It was not fear of death, but fear of being worthy of the hope in their eyes. He felt it pressing on him, but beside him, Queen Evelyn gave him strength. She leaned closer, so only he could hear. "They see you now as I have always seen you," she said softly. Nathan lowered his head, not from shame, but from the deep pull of her words. He had never thought himself more than a soldier, yet she spoke to him as if he was more than that, as if he was a piece of the kingdom itself. The Queen raised her head again and looked at the crowd. "Go," she told them kindly. "Turn to your homes and remember this day. We are strong because we stand together." People obeyed, bowing before they began to leave. Some lingered, glancing at Nathan one last time, as though to remind themselves that he was real. Slowly, the courtyard cleared until only the guards remained. Evelyn turned to Nathan. "Walk with me again," she said. Together they entered the citadel and moved down the wide corridors. The stone walls echoed with their steps. Nathan's mind swirled with thoughts he had kept locked away for years. He wanted to speak but could not find the right words. At last the Queen stopped in a smaller chamber, quiet and warm, where sunlight poured through tall windows. She turned to him. "Tell me," she said, "what you've carried all these years?" Nathan's throat tightened, looked away, his scar burning as if it wanted to speak for him. I carried faces, he said finally. The men who did not return. The ones who trusted me. I carried the weight of knowing I lived when they did not. Every night, I heard their voices in my dreams. His voice trembled at the end, but he did not hide it. The queen stepped closer. You carried them because you loved them, she said. Because you could not forget. Yes. That is not weakness, Nathan. That is honor. He shook his head slowly. Honor feels heavy, he whispered. Sometimes I thought it would crush me. She lifted his chin with her hand, forcing his eyes to meet hers. And yet you still stand, she said firmly. That is strength. You are not crushed. You are here. That scar on your face is proof not only of what you endured, but of what you gave. Nathan felt tears press at the corners of his eyes, but he held them back. He had not wept in years. The queen did not let go of him. Her voice softened again. You are not alone anymore. You never were. The kingdom lives because of what you gave, and so long as I breathe, I will never let your story be forgotten. Silence filled the chamber, but it was not empty. It was full of meaning, full of the unspoken bond between them. Nathan breathed deeply, and for the first time, the air did not feel heavy. He felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Though he had carried it for so long, he did not know how to live without it. He finally spoke. All I ever wanted was peace. His voice was low but steady. The queen gave a faint smile. And now you will have it. Not because you ran from the past, but because you faced it and carried it. She took his hand again and guided him toward the window. Outside, the city stretched beneath them, rooftops glowing under the evening sun. The sound of life drifted in, children laughing, merchants calling, horses moving through the streets. Look, she said, this is what you fought for. This is what your survival means. Nathan looked out and felt something rise inside him, something that had been gone for years. It was not pride, but peace. He no longer saw himself as a broken man with a scar. He saw himself as part of all that lived beyond those walls. The queen squeezed his hand gently. You gave them tomorrow, she whispered. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words sink deep. When he opened them again, the city no longer looked like a place he was distant from, looked like home. The sun began to sink lower in the sky, and golden light spilled through the windows of the citadel. Nathan stood beside Queen Evelyn, still looking out across the city. For years he had lived with silence, and now he felt the voices of life rising from below. The sound of children playing, the chatter of families, the rhythm of daily work, it all seemed like music to him. He had once feared he would never hear such things again. The queen watched him closely. Do you see it now? She asked. Nathan nodded slowly. I see it, he said. For so long I thought I had lost everything, but it was never lost. It lived here, waiting. His words were simple, but they carried the truth of years spent wandering in darkness. Queen Evelyn placed her hand gently over his, steadying him as if to anchor his spirit. Soon after, the queen led Nathan back into the great hall. The guards opened the doors, and once again the courtyard filled with people. News had spread quickly through the city. Men, women, and children pressed together to see the scarred soldier who stood at the queen's side. The crowd grew until the courtyard was alive with voices, each one eager to glimpse the man they had heard about in whispers. Nathan felt the weight of their eyes, but this time it did not crush him. He stood tall, the scar on his face clear in the evening light. He no longer wished to hide it. It was a mark of survival, a sign that he had walked through fire and returned. Queen Evelyn lifted her hand and silence spread once more. My people, she said, her voice ringing with calm strength. You know the man who stands beside me? He once gave everything so that this city, this kingdom, could live. He carries the mark of that sacrifice, but it is not a mark of pain, it is a mark of life. Because he endured, we endured. Because he survived, we live. The crowd listened, their eyes moving from the queen to Nathan. He felt their silence pressing, waiting for him to speak. For a moment, he hesitated. Then, with slow steps, he moved forward. He looked at them, not as a soldier to his army, but as a man to his people. I did not fight for glory, Nathan said. His voice was rough, but steady. I fought because I believed in you, in the farmers who work the fields, in the children who play in the streets, in the families who deserve peace. I fought because this place is worth it. Though I carry scars, I carry no regret." His words stirred the crowd. Some wept quietly, others raised their hands in respect. "Ah," a young woman near the front called out, "you are our hero." Nathan shook his head softly. "No," he said. "I am only a man who survived. The true heroes are those who gave everything and never came home. Remember them when you see me. Remember their courage in every stone of this city." The Queen stepped forward again, her hand resting on his arm. "Nathan Carter is more than a survivor," she declared. "He is a living story of what it means to endure. And as long as I reign, his name will never be forgotten." The people erupted in cheers, their voices filling the courtyard like a rising wave. Nathan stood still, his chest rising with deep breaths, his heart steady. For the first time in many years, he felt peace. The cheers did not feel heavy. They felt like a promise, a reminder that his suffering had meaning. As the light faded, the Queen turned to him with a small smile. "You gave them hope again," she whispered. Nathan looked at her, his eyes soft. "You gave me hope," he replied. Their words were quiet, but they carried more than any shouted praise could. When the night finally came, Nathan walked the streets of the city with the Queen at his side. People stepped forward to greet him, offering food, water, and thanks. Children ran ahead, laughing as they pointed at him, not in fear but in admiration. He touched their heads gently as he passed, each smile warming him further. By the time they returned to the Citadel, Nathan knew his journey was no longer one of pain. It was one of meaning. His scar was no longer just a reminder of the past. It was proof of survival. Proof of a bond between himself, the Queen, and the people he had once fought to protect. That night, as he looked once more across the glowing city, Nathan whispered to himself, "I am home." And for the first time in many years, he truly believed it.